Hello again. So some religious leaders have told the CRL Rights Commission they'll sort out their own problems. This comes as a number of controversial church leaders have been making negative headlines recently. This week, the watchdog held a summit with religious leaders to discuss ways of tackling problems in the sector. Let's discuss this further. I'm joined by Michael Swain from Freedom of Religion South Africa. Thank you very much, Michael, for joining us. So from what we understand, this was the first of its kind in terms of the summit. What were some of the issues that were ventilated?
I think very importantly, this summit came to give the religious community the opportunity to actually deal with the problems that it is facing and which the CRL report has identified. And very importantly, the meeting decided that it was important that the religious community itself took control of this process and actually looked for solutions developed by the religious community and for the religious community without undue interference from the CRL Commission, who've obviously done a very excellent job in highlighting some of the issues.
Can the religious community be trusted with that? We've seen what has happened where people are looking for something to believe in and they've been taken advantage of.
I think we have to remember that the vast majority of the religious community is not committing anything like what we're seeing, unfortunately, in what the media is sensationalizing. And while those acts are obviously reprehensible, I think it's important to note that those acts are largely criminal. And I think we must be ready to understand that the state has the responsibility, wherever it finds crime taking place, to deal with it, regardless of where it is. And if it's in the religious community, maybe it's more reprehensible, but nevertheless, that is the state's responsibility. But yes, I believe the religious community has taken responsibility. There is obviously work to do. There's the thought of developing a code of conduct, particularly so that there are basic standards and benchmarks which the religious community will be able to be held account to, albeit in a voluntary way. But importantly, I think we must not make the mistake of tarring what is actually a societal contributor in a major way from the religious community and tar it with a brush that says that everything is reprehensible and everything is bad.
Michael, while we agree that not everybody in that space is bad or not everybody is doing what most people would raise eyebrows to, we must concede that we have seen things, and this is not media sensationalism. We've seen pastors feeding people grass, from dental to grass to snakes to many other things. How do we then deal with that? And what is your responsibility in making sure that those who are going in the wrong way are actually set straight?
I think it's also important to note that, in fact, the religious community in those local areas has in many cases actually addressed the very issues that have come up. But again, where you see somebody committing a crime, committing an illegal act, then obviously the state must interfere. But we also have to understand that the Constitutional Court has already decided that even if a religious practice is bizarre or illogical or irrational, that doesn't necessarily make it wrong. So we just have to be careful before we too quickly intervene, and particularly where the state comes in and starts to decide to judge perhaps on what is defined as bona fide religious acts or not. We do believe that the state has now given the opportunity to the religious community to resolve these problems, and there's now a major process underway, which will be from local, provincial and national levels to really look at, from grassroots level, at the issues and to develop in-house, if you like, solutions so that the faith community can truly address these issues.
Many institutions have regulatory bodies. For the faith community, perhaps for some of us who are not aware, if this could be an educational moment for us, perhaps is there a body that actually regulates the work of religious communities amongst yourselves, if you're saying that the CRL Commission and others should leave you to do the work that you do?
I think it's very important, yes, because obviously many of the major denominations do have structures. But let's be clear, it's not as if the religious sector operates in a completely unregulated way. I mean, everyone in this country, including the religious sector, is governed by laws. There are tax laws, there are labour laws, there are building zoning restrictions, and obviously there's the criminal codes as well. So this is not an unregulated sector by any manner of means. I think the big concern is that, of course, when you start to look at perhaps what somebody is doing in terms of their religious faith and practice and expression, and then potentially somebody else judges whether that's valid or not, that can be a very important and serious infringement of our freedom of religion rights, which the Constitution does grant us. But again, all that having said, it is very important to note that if somebody is doing something illegal, that is definitely not covered by freedom of religion, and that should be dealt with in the normal course of law.
Michael Swain from Freedom of Religion South Africa, we appreciate your time this morning.